Marcus has a note on his phone called The Plan. He's rewritten it 11 times. Every version starts the same way. Wake up earlier, finish the project, stop putting off the thing he's been putting off since February. He reads it on Sunday nights with genuine conviction. By Tuesday, the note is buried under 17 new apps he downloaded to help him be more productive. The project is still unfinished. February was 8 months ago. If that sounds uncomfortably familiar, not because you're lazy, not because you lack ambition, but because something keeps standing between the decision and the action, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken. Here's what nobody in Western productivity culture will tell you. Procrastination was never a time management problem. It was never a discipline problem either. It's a nervous system problem, and every system you've been handed to fix it was built on the wrong diagnosis. The entire industry of planners, apps, accountability partners, and motivational content treats procrastination like a scheduling failure, when the research is consistent that it's actually an emotional regulation failure. You don't delay because you're bad at managing time. You delay because starting feels threatening in a way your brain is wired to avoid. Japan's warrior tradition understood this long before modern psychology had the language for it, not through therapy or self-help, but through 5 habits built into the daily structure of samurai life that removed the emotional friction before it could take hold. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what those 5 habits are, why they work at the neurological level, and how to apply each one starting tonight. One of them, the 4th one, is going to change the way you think about momentum permanently. It's the habit that makes the other 4 feel almost automatic once it's in place. If this is the kind of content that speaks to you, hit the like button and subscribe before we go any further. It takes 2 seconds, and it helps this channel reach more people who are tired of being told to just try harder. Now let's get into it. Before we touch any of the 5 habits, we need to clear out the biggest lie the productivity world ever sold you, because as long as you believe it, nothing else will stick. The lie is this: procrastination is a character flaw. That people who get things done are simply wired differently, more disciplined, more motivated, more willing to push through discomfort. That if you struggle to start, there's something fundamentally wrong with the way you're built. This belief is not just wrong. It's actively harmful, because it sends you looking for the solution in the wrong place. More willpower, more motivation, more accountability, when the actual mechanism has nothing to do with any of those things. Dr. Fuchsia Sirois at Durham University has spent years studying procrastination, and her research consistently shows that procrastination is not about laziness. It's about avoiding the negative emotions associated with a task: anxiety, self-doubt, boredom, fear of failure, in favor of short-term emotional relief. Your brain isn't sabotaging your goals. It's protecting you from feelings it has learned to associate with certain tasks. The avoidance makes perfect sense from a survival standpoint. It only becomes a problem when the thing you're avoiding is the exact thing your life depends on you doing. This is why every system that tells you to just push through, just feel the fear and do it anyway, just get up earlier and be more disciplined, eventually collapses. You can overpower the avoidance response for a few days. You cannot overpower it indefinitely. Eventually, the brain wins. Not because you're weak, but because fighting your own nervous system with sheer will is a war nobody wins long term. The samurai didn't fight that war. They dismantled it before it started. Here's how. The first habit is Mushin, translated literally as no mind, a state of action without the internal debate that normally precedes it. In combat training, samurai spent years developing Mushin precisely because hesitation in a duel meant death. The goal was to eliminate the gap between the decision to act and the act itself, to train the body to move before the thinking mind could intervene with doubt, fear, or analysis. Applied to procrastination, the mechanism is exact. Every time you sit down to do something difficult, there's a moment, sometimes just a few seconds, where your mind opens the floor to objections. Is this the right time? Am I prepared enough? What if I get it wrong? That internal courtroom is where procrastination is born. Not in the task itself. In the negotiation about whether to start. Peter Gollwitzer at New York University studied this phenomenon and found that people who planned exactly when and where they would perform a task, what he called implementation intentions, followed through at dramatically higher rates than people who only decided what they wanted to accomplish. The decision made in advance, with no room for renegotiation, short-circuits the internal debate before it starts. That's Mushin in practice. Tonight, before you go to bed, write down one task for tomorrow with a specific start time and a specific location. Not work on the project tomorrow. Open the document at 9 a.m. at the kitchen table. The more specific the trigger, the less room the negotiating mind has to operate. The second habit is Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous, deliberately tiny improvement that became famous through Japanese manufacturing but originates in a much older cultural instinct toward gradual mastery over dramatic gesture. Here's the procrastination connection that most people miss. The reason big tasks feel impossible to start isn't usually the work itself. It's the size of the first step your brain is trying to take. When your mind scans a project and sees a mountain, it registers that mountain as a threat before you've written a single word or made a single decision. The amygdala fires. Resistance floods in. And you find yourself doing literally anything else. Robert Maurer, a clinical psychologist who studied Kaizen's application in behavioral change, found that shrinking a task until it was nearly laughably small bypassed this threat response entirely. 1 sentence. 1 minute. 1 email. Not because small actions produce big results immediately, but because small actions don't trigger the alarm system that stops you from starting. And starting, consistently, is where momentum comes from. The practical application is this: whatever you've been avoiding longest, identify the smallest possible version of starting it, not the whole thing, just the first 60 seconds, and do only that. Not as a warm-up, as the actual commitment for today. The third habit is Giri, a samurai concept of duty and obligation that operated independently of how the warrior felt on any given morning. Giri wasn't about motivation. It wasn't conditional on energy levels, inspiration, or favorable circumstances. It was simply what you did because of who you were and what you had committed to, full stop. Most Western approaches to productivity tie action to feeling. You're supposed to find your passion, get motivated, build excitement around your goals. But motivation is a mood, and moods are unreliable. The samurai understood that feelings would fluctuate: fear, doubt, exhaustion, boredom, and that none of those feelings were relevant to whether the duty got done. Research from Angela Duckworth at the University of Pennsylvania on grit, the combination of passion and perseverance over long time horizons, found that the highest performers weren't people who felt more motivated than everyone else. They were people who had decoupled their behavior from their emotional state. They showed up because showing up was the standard, not because they felt like it that particular day. The shift here is identity-based. Stop asking yourself if you feel like doing the task. Ask instead, is this something a person like me does? And then act from that answer, not from your mood. The fourth habit is Mokuso, and this is the one that makes the other 4 work. Mokuso is a brief, ritualized period of silence practiced in Japanese martial arts dojos before training begins. Students sit, close their eyes, and clear the residue of whatever happened before they walked through the door. The argument from the morning, the anxiety about the meeting, the mental noise that follows every person into every room they enter. It typically lasts no more than 60 to 90 seconds. And its function is precise. It creates a psychological threshold between what was and what is about to begin. Here's why this matters for procrastination specifically. One of the most consistent findings in task-switching research, including work from the American Psychological Association on cognitive residue, is that the mental weight of unfinished or emotionally loaded prior tasks actively degrades your ability to engage with whatever comes next. You sit down to write, but your brain is still half processing the email you sent an hour ago. You try to focus on the thing that matters most, but you're running 17 background tabs you haven't consciously acknowledged. The resistance you feel isn't always about the task in front of you. Sometimes it's the accumulated noise of everything behind you. Mokuso clears the slate deliberately. It doesn't require meditation experience. It doesn't require silence in your environment. It requires 60 seconds of sitting still with your eyes closed before you begin, the same 60 seconds, in the same spot, every single time. The repetition is what trains the brain to recognize the ritual as a transition cue. Over time, the silence itself signals that it's time to begin, and the internal debate that normally shows up at the start has nowhere to land. The fifth habit is hansei, a practice of honest, non-punishing self-reflection used in Japanese culture after any significant effort, whether the outcome was good or bad. In the samurai tradition, a warrior who did not examine his performance, his decisions, his hesitations, his errors, was considered dangerous not because of weakness, but because of blindness. You cannot correct what you refuse to see. For procrastination, hansei addresses the part of the cycle that most productivity advice ignores entirely. What happens after you procrastinate? Most people respond to a day of avoidance with guilt, self-criticism, and a renewed promise to do better tomorrow that carries the same emotional weight as every previous promise. That guilt doesn't produce better behavior. It produces more avoidance, because now the task is associated not just with the original anxiety, but with the additional shame of having failed at it again. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas at Austin has conducted extensive research on self-compassion, finding that people who respond to their own failures with curiosity and kindness, rather than self-attack, recover faster, stay more consistent over time, and are less likely to repeat the same mistakes. Hansei isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It's about asking an honest question without a punishing answer. What actually happened today, and what would I do differently tomorrow? The simplest version of this is one honest sentence written at the end of each day. Not a productivity review. Not a guilt list. Just one clear observation about where the resistance showed up, and one small adjustment for tomorrow. Tonight, do only this. Before you go to sleep, open whatever you've been avoiding the longest, not to work on it, just to open it. Set it as the first tab on your screen. Write the specific time tomorrow morning when you'll sit down with it. Then do 60 seconds of silence. That's the whole assignment. Not because 60 seconds solves the problem. Because it starts the sequence. And starting the sequence, done consistently enough, is how a person who used to procrastinate becomes a person who simply doesn't anymore. Marcus rewrote the plan one more time, but this version had one task, one time, and one place. He didn't finish the project in a day. But he opened the document on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m., sat in silence for 60 seconds first, and wrote 2 paragraphs before his brain had time to object. Wednesday, 3 paragraphs. The mountain didn't disappear. He just stopped trying to climb it all at once. Comment the word begin right now. Just that one word, nothing else. It's your public signal that today is the day you stop negotiating with the task you've been avoiding and simply open the door. If you know someone who's been carrying the same unfinished project for months, the person who knows exactly what they need to do and can't seem to make themselves do it, send them this video. Not as a hint, as a genuine gift. And if this way of thinking about discipline and action resonates with you, subscribe if you want more of this.